All right, so we've weight painted our character, and we created an armature for our character, and then we weight painted it. Excuse me. um, so we could start to animate it this way, but what you might notice is that, let's say I want to start to build walking pose. I have to, if I want to place this foot over here on the ground, I have to grab this, rotate it, grab this, rotate it, and put it into place. And same with this leg. So you could conceivably work this way, but it's not ideal. It's pretty annoying, in fact. And the second I try to start moving my character forward, I'm going to have a whole host of complications. So if I move this forward, I'll have to move this foot back and kind of guess where it was, and that's just not good. So instead, what we want to do is set up some constraints for our bone motion, which we can use to do things like tell the armature to plant one of its feet at a certain position and not move it from there no matter what. Or, well, that's the main one we're going to do. So in order to start building these constraints, first I'm going to reset my pose. So I'll press the A key to select all the bones, and then I'll go pose. Where is it? Clear transform and all. So that's pose, clear transform, all. And that resets all my bones to their default position. So now I actually control these constraints using bones in my armature. So I'll go into edit mode, and I'm going to add a couple of bones. I'll start by just adding one to control where my leg goes to. So I'll select this joint, and I'll press the E key to extrude a new bone out, and Z key to lock it so it's going straight down. Now, as it is, this bone is a child of the leg bone, which I don't actually want. I just extruded it from there in order to have it be placed perfectly. So I can detach, you can see if I grab it and move it, it's moving these other bones around, which is not necessarily what I want. So I'll go to bone, and then relations, and then I can see the parent. I can just delete that link. And so now when I move this bone, it's still not free. Why are you not free? There we go. Now it's free. So I'll go ahead and call this bone IK left. Here, we'll call it foot IKL. So the constraint I'm going to be using is called inverse kinematics. That's a fancy word that it just means it's the math that it uses in order to tell all these bones to rotate and position themselves so that the foot ends up where I want it. That's what inverse kinematics does. Forward kinematics is what we already have with our armature. So I start here, rotate it, and then I have to move forward down the bone. Inverse kinematics says I can start with a target position, and it moves back up, rotating things in order to position them. Okay, so there's my IK bone that's separate from my other leg. Let's go ahead and do this all the way through on one of our legs before we get to the other one. So I actually can't add the constraints I want here in edit mode. I have to go back to pose mode. A little confusing, so I'm going back to pose mode. And then to add an IK constraint, I'll select this leg bone. This is going to be the last bone on the limb that I'm going to control using IK. And you can use this to control arms as well, or a tail, depending on what you want to do. So I'll select the last bone in the chain of bones, the last bone on the limb that I want to control. And then I'll go to this tab here, which is my bone constraints. You can see it has a bone with kind of a weird chain link around it. I'll click that. And then kind of like my modifiers, I can go here to add a bone constraint. There's a lot of them, but I want to use inverse kinematics, or IK. And then I need to set the target of my IK constraint. So to start with, I need to tell it that we're looking at the object, the armature, and then I need to pick which bone. And this is why it's important to name your bones descriptively. and I can see my foot IKL is right at the top of the list. And now this turns yellow when it's connected properly. So now I can click on this, and since we're in pose mode, I can just move it, and we can see how this IK bone is affecting our leg. Now it's not behaving exactly the way we want. It's actually moving every bone all the way up to the root in order to position our foot where the IK bone is. So to fix that, I can change I can change the chain length here. So when it's set to 0, it marches all the way up the list of bones to the root, which is why you can see this dotted yellow line going back here to the root bone. If I change it to 1, now the IK bone is only affecting the one bone. If I change it to 2, now it's affecting both the shin and the upper leg. There we go. So this works for us pretty well. Let's see. I can move this down here. So if I can plant my foot out there like we're walking, and have this other one be back there. But as you can see, my foot is going to penetrate the ground as I move. So I need to create another bone that actually controls the rotation of this foot bone, so that when I place my foot on the ground and move it, it's not rotating all over the place. So I'm going to reset my pose again. So A to select all, pose, and then clear transform all. So we're back to normal. I'll enter edit mode. I'm using the tab key to enter edit mode. And just for convenience sake, I'll extrude another bone from the end of this IK bone at roughly the same rotation, roughly the same angle as this foot bone. So there's my foot bone, and this bone will be my rotation control. Okay, so go back to pose mode. I'll select this bone, the bone that's going to be controlled, and I'll add another constraint in the Constraints tab and call it Copy Rotation. I'll use the Copy Rotation one. So this bone is going to copy the rotation of this bone. So I'll select the armature as my target, and then here we go. So I should change the name of this one. I'll do it in a second, but I know that because I extruded my rotation bone from my IK bone, it's called Foot IKL001. So I'll select that one because I know it's the right one. But I'm going to go back and rename this one, so I'll call it Foot Rotation L. And it still maintains the connection on my joint constraint, but it's just good to have things named properly. So now you can see as I rotate my rotation control, it's rotating that foot. And if I were to set this up again, like as though I'm crouching, that foot stays right where I want it. It's not moving at all. So I can we'll treat this green line as the ground, right? So even as that leg bone rotates in relation to the foot, we're still, the foot is staying planted on the ground. You can see the heel is moving around a little bit. We would want to fix that probably just with weight painting, but I'm just going to leave it for now because this is a demo and we don't care. All right, so we can go ahead and do the exact same thing for the other side. I don't have to extrude these bones again though. I can just go select them both and then hit Shift D to duplicate, X to pull them over. And I'll just try to position them in basically the right place. That looks pretty good right there. And I can quickly select my shin bone, add my inverse kinematics, armature. Oh, this is where we really do have to rename them. This is starting to get confusing, right? Foot IKL, Foot IKL001. So I just duplicated both of these. I'll just name these. This one's going to be Foot IKR and Foot Rotation R. I'll go back to my constraint, my bone with a constraint on it. Now I can choose Foot IKR, and then I can add my Copy Rotation constraint, and then I'll choose Foot Rotation R. So now, whoa, wait a second. That's right, I forgot to set the chain length of this IK bone. So remember, when it's set to 0, this IK constraint will affect every bone all the way back up to the root, which is why it's producing this kind of weird behavior that I'm not expecting. So I'll click that, and I'll just increase this to 2 from 0. So now this constraint affects this shin bone and this leg bone, just 2 bones in the chain. And you can see this yellow dotted line goes from my ankle up to where my hip connects to my leg bone. And so now, whoa, oh, I have this snapping turned on. So now you can see, woohoo, I'm jumping around. Pretty cool.